Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. Guys, I am a retired New York City police detective with 20 plus years of law enforcement. And if you like all things true crime related from a police perspective, please consider hitting the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you will get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when he's around, when we go live or upload another video. And tonight we're going to talk about the case out in Alabama, Casey White, Vicky White, the corrections executive, who we now come to kind of find out here is she kind of broke him out of jail. We're going to get into it, but before we do, I want to just tell you I have three really special guests who are corrections professionals. They have corrections in their background. They live and breathe and talk corrections all day, every day on Tier Talk with Anthony Gangi. So Anthony's going to be here with us. Connie's here, and we have a special guest joining us from the West Coast. But before we get into it, I want to say thank you to you, the replay viewers, the Patreon supporters, the channel members, and everyone who positively engages in all of these live streams. You guys are an intricate part of what makes this a great place to be. Not only are we showing you and giving you the law enforcement detective perspective, we're also giving you the perspective from the corrections side. And tonight, that's what this live stream is going to be all about. We are going to talk with our guests about procedure, about safety, about what happened in the events that led up to this heinous murderer to now be out free, running loose out in society, and how that should never happen. We're going to get into it in a few minutes, but before we do, I got a little bit of media. I want you guys to see a former sheriff who handled this guy before he was transferred, and in his past. This guy knows a lot about him, and he was instrumental in getting him to surrender when he had all these hostages that he was holding in his past criminal history. So I'm going to play this quickly for you guys, and then we'll come right on with our special guest. This is just a few minutes.
And as you just heard, Casey White was in prison for a two-state crime spree that ended with his arrest in 2015 in Limestone County by then Sheriff Mike Blakely.
So Mike Blakely is a retired sheriff, but I wanted to set this up for you so you could see how evil this guy is and how deadly he is and how vicious this guy is. And that's going to set up our conversation with Anthony, Connie, and our special guest.
But that wasn't actually the end of Blakely's contact with Mr. White. And their next encounter paved the way for him to actually wind up in the Lauderdale County Jail. News 19 investigative reporter Dallas Parker joins us now with more on that. Dallas?
That's right, Jerry. Former Limestone County Sheriff Mike Blakely tells me he received several letters from Casey White when he was a state prisoner in Bessemer. The most significant was his claim that he had knowledge about a cold case murder out of Lauderdale County. Following a 2015 crime spree in two states, Casey White was arrested in Limestone County and subsequently sentenced to 75 years in prison. Former Limestone County Sheriff Mike Blakely says White spent several years in the Limestone County Jail before his conviction. But after he was transferred to the Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer, Blakely says he began receiving letters.
After he was in the penitentiary, he wrote me several times, one time telling me that he could solve a murder for Lauderdale County.
In further correspondence, Blakely tells News 19 White was desperate for a transfer.
It's my understanding, according to Casey, he'd been shanked a couple times while he was there in prison. He didn't like it down there and wanted to get back in the county jail.
After confessing, White was charged with the murder of Connie Ridgway in 2020. He later pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease to those charges. Prosecutors said White claimed he was paid to kill Ridgway. He was set to go on trial in April of this year, leading to his return to the Lauderdale County Detention Center for pretrial motions. But that trial was continued to June. And White is now on the run with the jail's Assistant Director of Corrections, Vicky White.
They're probably trying to put as much distance between this area and themselves as they possibly can.
Blakely issued a warning for the public.
I would suggest that anyone that comes in contact with him be extremely cautious, and not only that, any officer that comes in contact with him.
And an invitation to Casey White.
Call me, come see me, let's see if we can straighten this mess out.
Now, former Sheriff Blakely said he's known Casey White since he was a child. In that 2015 encounter, Blakely convinced White to drop his gun and to give himself up to authorities. Now, you can see dash cam video of that standoff on WHNT.com. Barry.
Dallas, thank you. Once again, while we do have some details in this continuing saga, the bottom line at this point is, and the sheriffs did not say, and apparently doesn't know, what kind of vehicle they may be driving or, once again, where they may be headed. Again, if you see either of these two, it is important to remember, do not approach them. Call 911. We're going to continue to bring the very latest to you from Lauderdale County, on air, online, and of course on WHNT.
All right, that was some good coverage on the case. I want to go quickly and just let you guys know, yes, this is a dangerous person, but now he is amplified by having his accomplice with him. Vicky is now considered armed and dangerous. There is a warrant out for arrest. The US Marshals is looking for both of them. So again, I want to say, folks, if these people are in your community and you see them, just call 911. Do not approach. Do not try to be a hero. And again, I hope law enforcement gets them sooner than later and that nobody is hurt. Thank you, Melissa, for becoming a channel member. And thank you so much for the super sticker that just came through. Melissa sent in a super chat. She said, thank you so much, DutyRon and the Sweet Mods, for all your hard work. We appreciate it. But without further ado, I got my esteemed guests waiting in the background. Anthony Gangi is a return guest. He's here with us all the time. He takes the time out of his busy schedule. This guy is a jack of all trades. And we have Connie. Connie, I always like to call her Connie Alleyne, the smiling, beautiful, great friend of Crime Time with DutyRon. There's Anthony, and there's Connie. And we also have a special guest. We're going to introduce him in a second. Anthony, how you doing? Connie, how's everything going?
I'll let ladies go first, Connie.
Thanks.
Oh my gosh. So everything's good with me. I've been out of circulation for a little while I was doing some home improvement stuff. I know Gangi was so sad. He hasn't had me for a while,
Like
but I am back. Imagine that. My first appearance is on DutyRon.
I just wanted you to know we didn't forget about you, Connie. I felt for a second that I was forgotten, but hey, good to meet you, Connie. It's like
Oh, get out of here.
All right. So quickly, guys, Anthony, give a condensed version of your experience. These are two correction professionals, and then we're going to get Russ on with us in 2 seconds. So go ahead, Anthony, give the audience a little bit of a background, and we're going to be talking everything corrections here and everything that went wrong in this case.
All right, so my personal background, is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay, so I have over 20 years in the system. I started as custody. I worked my way up to the administrative level. I've worked at 4 prisons, including now I'm working at the highest maximum security prison in my state. I'm also the author of a book called Inmate Manipulation Decoded. It's a book that I felt was needed. Again, I think this would be a good woman who may have needed to read this book, maybe a little too late now, but I'm sure we'll go ahead and send her a copy anyway, you know, hindsight 2020. But and then I host a YouTube channel called Tier Talk, which we do what we can to help the profession move forward, but also, you know, give people a better understanding of what it's like behind the wall.
Absolutely. And thank you, Connie. I'll let you go because I love to hear about you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Connie Alleyne. I come to you guys with, I don't know, almost 20 years of experience in corrections, 10 years at Rikers Island, another 5 years in Connecticut Department of Corrections. And then I went on to start an academy. So I have the Civilian Corrections Academy where I train non-uniform employees who work in corrections. Clearly something that's needed. And now, certainly I'm the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. I'm a professor at Monroe College. I teach criminal justice. So it's kind of all of that in one. And I enjoy doing Tier Talk and DutyRon because it's always a good time to be able to talk to your colleagues who really understand the world we're coming from.
And, you know, you are a fan favorite, Connie, because A, everybody loves your smile, but more importantly, they love the information that you give and how you deliver it. Tonight, we have a third guest, Russ Hamilton. He is on the West Coast. He spent quite a bit of time in San Quentin. In '89 is when he started. He's got 27 years, sergeant in a smaller facility, and then He's gone on to do quite a bit of other things. Russ, thank you so much for taking out the time, and welcome to Crime Time with DutyRon.
You're muted, Russ. I knew it. I got it.
That's the only time Anthony's ever got me on having my mic muted, but it's a pleasure to be here, DutyRon. And you know, I've done quite a few things in my career. Started at San Quentin in '89, as you said. I've been a sergeant with California Department of Corrections, a senior correctional officer for a small juvenile facility in my home county, as well as now I work for a private contractor, and we do reentry and rehabilitation work with a local probation department, and I am the case manager at the local county jail here now for that private company.
And Russ, can you tell the audience what the founder of the Keepers of Kaos is?
Yes, that's me, the founder of the Keepers of Kaos. It's a Facebook group, and my focus there is to provide training, knowledge, and you know, just general information for those that are actually involved in, you know, working behind the walls. And it doesn't matter whether you're a teacher or you're an administrator or medical. It's all about, you know, having that fellowship and that backup in order to do one of the most difficult jobs that there is in the whole country, which is, you know, dealing with felons.
Absolutely. And I always used to say, as a police officer, because I have so much respect and admiration for the job of a corrections officer and everybody from the civilians to everybody in upper management in correction institutions. I have tremendous respect. But what I always used to say is, we get them off the street and we have a small little contact with them, and then you guys have to babysit them for the rest of their time. So it's not an easy job, and you said it well, Russ. So I tip my cap to the men and women of the correctional department and the correction field across the world, for that matter. I'm going to start off with the two gentlemen. I know it's not polite, but Connie, please forgive me on this one. I want to get from you first, Russ, your take. Casey White, 38 years old, 2 counts of capital murder, gives a confession on September of 2020. As we heard, the sheriff got him to turn himself in and give the hostages up and didn't kill anybody further. He stands 6'9", 330 pounds. What's your take in a general overview of this situation and what went wrong here?
So the first thing that strikes me is the fact that someone with that type of physical stature, you know, being at a county jail, so many times, you know, we would have, you know, people in that special safekeeper mode that they would send us, you know, if they were someone that was, you know, exceptionally dangerous, because, you know, some of these county jails just aren't set up to handle someone like that. I would say that, you know, probably, well, I can't say probably, but I would say just from some of the machinations that appeared to be going on, this guy, one way or another, whether it was by getting stabbed or doing other things, I think that he wanted to be at that county jail in order to either exploit a previous relationship or knowledge of that female, and or, you know, perhaps he knew that the physical layout there was something that was going to be easier to get over and to escape from than your typical state institution. I say that, though, I got to say that I have, you know, no special inside knowledge on that. But when you look at the circumstances, it's clear that he wanted to escape and that he wanted to try and leverage some sort of exploit that he perhaps thought that he saw.
And we heard Russ, the sheriff, say on a press conference there, on a news conference, I'm going to play that in a few minutes. The current sheriff, he said, Rick Singleton, the current sheriff over in that county jail in Lauderdale, he said that this guy has nothing to lose. And we heard the ex-sheriff say that he was getting shanked at the old location. He got shanked 2 or 3 times. He wasn't happy there. There's a lot of gang activity. This place, minimum security, didn't seem like a huge facility. I looked at an overview and overhead of it, 200 and something inmates it can hold. And it looked like they had just a small little rec area in the middle. But nonetheless, Anthony, I wanted to get your take on this, you know, from an executive's point of view.
Yeah. So, I mean, right off the bat, watching it and then hitting up with Russ right after that, we knew something was up with this female and the inmate. We just didn't want to post anything right away because again, you never know, but we were pretty sure, based on all the violations in procedure and policy, that something had to occur between him and her. So right off the bat, there had to have been a developed relationship. Now, my thing right off the bat, if I was the higher level executive staff, I'm going to pull every camera footage I can get my hands on, every logbook, everything that can possibly note any interactions she had. Oh, go ahead. Was that
Right.
somebody?
No, again, that was me. It's fine.
Oh, any possible thing that can note any interaction she's had with that inmate. Now, her title is an assistant director. So I'm having her as a high-level person in charge of operations. So she oversees custody at a high level. Therefore, her specific interactions with every inmate should be very limited. I mean, extremely limited.
Right.
So if I was, let's say, a frontline staff person, officer, whatever it is, and she keeps on frequenting the unit, and actually I just did something about this in something I'm writing, there's going to be some moments where I'm like, hey, you know what? You're going to have to log yourself in. I don't know. I'm becoming a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe even go to my union with this, but there's something with this relationship that should have been noticed by the front line or by people that, if word traveled, maybe executive management could have already been investigating this. And maybe she got wind of it and said, yo, we got to do something before they start calling me out.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you on that. But, you know, the thing of it is, you know, in the police department and in the correction department, it's like a paramilitary organization, right? So we are taught in the police academy, if you see something, this is by our own union representatives, if you see something from a supervisor that's not right, in other words, you're given a lawful order to do something that's illegal, you're not to do it. Although, you know, we're scathing and we're playing a little bit of Monday morning quarterback here, if she was violating policy in an extreme way, in other words, her going and taking this guy out on her own, does she have a history of her personally transporting prisoners? Has she ever transported prisoners in recent history? Now, these are all things that should have just jumped out at some of the people who were on duty at that time. And if she made this outlandish claim, what would it have taken for someone to call the sheriff himself, or call his assistant and say, hey, I think there's something going on here, but I might be wrong. Vicky wants to take this perp out, you know, takes this guy out. He's 6'9", 330 pounds. She said that she's sick. She told the powers that be there that after completion of this transport, she was going to the hospital.
Right. So with this, the funny thing is sometimes the staff member could be very good at how they manipulate some level of comfortability with their fellow staff. So don't forget, I mean, you know, could the inmate have manipulated her? Possibly, but she definitely had some influence over staff, whether it was by the position or whether it was by just she was a well-liked individual from what I was hearing. So she could have used that influence to kind of maneuver. Now, remember, there's a difference between an unlawful order and a violation of policy. Higher levels, believe it or not, we do have some discretion within policy, but don't get me wrong. If I ever went on the scene and I told one of my officers, hey, I'm doing this, the officer is going to make note. Hey, that's a violation of policy. Not a problem. Document it, put my name in, do whatever. But when it becomes an unlawful order, that's something totally different. Because
now I want to go to Connie because this is Connie's expertise. When we talk about you know, and the synopsis for this, when we looked at the outline, she said that he was going for a psychiatric hearing or some type of psychiatric evaluation at the courthouse. Connie, I know that you did intake and, you know, you did, you know, lots of the stuff at Rikers. My question to you, and it could be as, you know, as brief or as how deep you want to go into this. What type of system is set up within most facilities for something like this? Is this something that just gets put on a Friday morning, or is it something that's on the schedule from the previous night? Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. So anytime there's some sort of court order in place, we usually have a scheduled date and time that we're arranging for transport. There is no today for tomorrow unless there was some emergent situation that came up, at which point everyone knows that is happening and everyone is kind of working together to make sure that that inmate gets from point A to point B and back. And there's never a point, even I'm thinking of me as an administrator, no matter what inmate needed to go out, there's never a time that I'm going to say I am escorting someone somewhere, right? And I get it. Different states have different structures and such. And perhaps the only thing I'm thinking is that, and a lot of what we're facing is some staffing shortages. So there could have been some wiggle room in there where she was allowed to do a transport because of a staffing issue. But in my mind, there's never a reason for anyone to be transporting in the manner that she was transporting. And particularly stating that there is some sort of court order. There would be tons of paperwork supporting that there was a court order. And there would have been a lot of preparation, especially someone with his classification. Right. Typically, we would have an interdisciplinary meeting. There would be a warden's meeting. There would be tons of meetings about how we're going to transport. And I mean, for him to just have the cuffs in the front, like I've seen higher security transports with leg irons. Like, I mean, this to me anyway, as I'm looking at it, it's almost, how did this even transpire, right? Unless it was, she knew the people who she was going to be passing that day, who was allowing her to walk out with this inmate by herself, because there is no medical or mental health appointment that any person would be taking an inmate to, that there wasn't solid documentation and hours at least of preparation for that individual to be transported.
Right, exactly. And I'm sorry about that, Connie. That's just me. I was just setting up the next clip that I'm going to play. You know, you bring up some great points here. I have a video clip, and it doesn't have any sound, but this is her removing Casey from the Sally Port. It is disturbing to see it as a professional, because I've been in and out of these hundreds of times, perhaps even thousands. I worked in the trip team for New York City Police Department. So I went around to the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and drove and picked up prisoners, just like in this setting like this, at county, local jails. And I went to some state facilities, and never have I seen someone walk out with a prisoner as lax as she has here in this video, what we're about to see. Anthony?
Yeah, Ron, I just want to compliment something that Connie said too before you see the video. So be mindful, the court trips that we have, obviously there has to be a psych eval to make sure the person's able to stand trial. Usually we don't let the inmate know when that's scheduled. That's very privileged information. Usually for high profile inmates, there usually is a team that's going to be ready for that. We do have special team escorts. One thing about this all is that the female, so when you do an escort, you're responsible for that inmate. That includes that you are the one stripping that inmate to make sure that the inmate has no contraband. So based on PREA, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act, if she was to do the trip,
what act is that, Anthony? What's the act?
The Prison Rape Elimination Act. So based on PREA, this officer here is in violation of PREA, or the facility is, because technically, if she's taking the responsibility of the escort, she's also taking the responsibility of the stripping of that inmate. That means she has taken ownership of that inmate. There's no way she could be able to strip that inmate. Therefore, you need a male on that escort. So right off the bat, that is a serious violation that we saw right off the get-go when we watched this video. How are you taking responsibility of an inmate without stripping them to make sure they have no contraband?
All right, I'm going to go to this video right now. I'm going to put it full screen. Again, folks, this was released to the news by the Sheriff's Department. So this is the Lauderdale County Sheriff's Office. You can see it up in the upper right-hand corner, the branding. So this is approved for release. It's out there. So let me let this play. And again, this is disturbing to see this, to say the least. I'm muting Anthony's mic because we don't want to listen to him do all of his typing like last time. Right, Connie? All right, so this is security footage showing showing the Casey White being brought out by Vicky White. No relation, by the way. She just gets in the car. She threw him in the back. She didn't even seatbelt him. But now we're going to see inside that building, inside those two doors where he came out of. We're going to see footage. This is kind of backwards, but we're going to see the footage from the opposite angle. Well, let's listen to what he has to say.
And so that word has gotten out prematurely. We were hoping to hold on to that information another day or two in hopes that we could see the car on the road or whatever. I suspect they're going to ditch that car. So now we're back to square one, not knowing what they're driving.
Showing Vicky White leading Casey White into her patrol car, closing the door and driving out from the detention center. Reports from inmates inside the jail say that Casey White received special privileges over other inmates, such as extra food and attention. We also know that Vicky White purchased a copper-colored 2007 Ford Edge SUV before the escape, which was last seen in Rogersville last Friday.
All right, so let me go to both Russ and Anthony. I'll ask Russ first. I see Anthony shaking his head. We heard the reporter say that inmates were interviewed and questioned in regards to the treatment of, how Vicky White treated Casey White, the inmate. They said that he got extra food, he got extra privileges. Again, is this something that is widespread in the correction field, or is this something that is something that is happening rarely and we're hearing about it?
I would say this is one of those things that it's fairly rare, but it's good evidence of both manipulation and, the type of contact, interaction, and relationship that's not supposed to happen at all. So she was obviously favoring him. That was also an opportunity potentially for other inmates to, even exploit her more if she was giving him some favors so that they could get their favors too. That's just the way things operate inside the prison walls.
Right.
So in some way he had managed to exploit her, probably emotionally. There's some people that are really prone to enjoying that type of special treatment, that special attention, if you will, from an inmate, from someone who's done a high notoriety crime like this guy has. And so even though it's rare, we do deal with cases like this. If you see the way she conducted that part of the escort, it was very lackadaisical. You saw that she slammed the door and she didn't bother to, check it to see if it was even locked. So apparently, she was just trusting all of the equipment, and she had absolutely no situational awareness about her whatsoever, especially considering the fact that he's such a high profile and extremely dangerous individual. I took lots of extremely, high notoriety guys out, and I'll tell you what, I would have been aghast if I had seen my partner do what she did right there.
Yeah, I mean, I gasp, and I'm not even a correction professional, but like I said, I've been in and out of these facilities, and I've watched how New Jersey operates, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New York, and I've seen multi-agencies dealing with high-end, inmates like this, and I've never seen someone so lax. Let me just show the angle that I wanted to show here. This is inside the Sally Port, inside the door that we saw her drive off. The car is up. Let me take the branding off so you guys can see this a little bit better. All right, so this is the car up here in the top right underneath 929, and you're going to see her come out. She's going to come out from that Sally Port, come back inside, and there was probably an officer or two that got him ready, because I read the reports. There were, I think, 2 officers that got him ready and put him in those leg shackles and the travel belt. Connie, what you saw in the front there was that, we used to use it when we would travel a long distance with a perpetrator in a car. In other words, if we were going across state lines, instead of having his hands behind his back, which is inhumane, we put him on with those travel belts in the front, and we would double lock them and we would shackle them down to the floorboard of the car so they wouldn't go anywhere. But this is what we see him come out with. There's no sound to this because it's inside jail video. All right. She's going to be coming in from outside now. She's going to be coming up from here. She's doing something in the car and she's fumbling with a radio. So there she's talking on the radio right now and she holsters it and then goes in here, not locked. And it looks like he's right there. And she comes right out with them. Karen Kennedy, thank you for the super sticker. Appreciate the $10 super sticker. And thank you to anybody else who has given super chat along the way. Wow, this is taking a long time. I thought she came right out. Okay, here she comes. And she's ahead of him, not even looking back. She's not even looking. And now we'll see it from the other angle. It'll go to him. He's getting in the car. You saw the car actually move. She shuts the door and just goes around. And now this camera angle will now cut to the outside, and you'll see him coming out. Disturbing, to say the least. Almost looks like she has a limp. Okay, so there you have it. Any thoughts?
Yeah. Just when you see the fact that she held the door open for him there, that's kind of the kind of body language that you look, she's actually looking out for him. And yeah, sometimes you have to hold a door like that for some, prisoners or something, but man, she should be, facing him. He shouldn't have those, cuffs on in the front where he can just, come around and strangle her. There's nobody there for her backup. It just looks bad all the way around, but we know that she, or at least, it's highly suspected right now that she manipulated that situation. But still, where's the backup in that situation? She should have had multiple people on him. When I handled guys that were of that caliber or even higher, it was going to be, a minimum 2-on-1. The guy's going to, have to be shackled and not with that ability to go around there. Now, I couldn't see for sure, how tight they maybe had those and if the waist restraint was properly applied, but it looked to me like they were just in front there. But, any way you look at it, it's bad.
Yeah, he had leg shackles on. You could see it as he comes out here. Look down.
Well, I mean the front hands. I can't quite make out what he's got there.
Yeah, it looks like a travel belt. It looks like a travel chain. Not even the belt. It's just a chain. See, there's cuffs in the front, and then it goes down his legs. It goes down from beneath his legs down. So it's a chain that goes up. I've seen them. They're not really that secure. So it's basically a pair of handcuffs, guys. And then in the front, it's just cuffed in the front. And then there's a chain that comes down, goes down between his legs, down to the leg shackles, and then the leg shackles. But they were very loose. I mean, he could have ran in those. Again, this is shocking to see. How does this happen, guys? How does this happen, Anthony? You're muted.
You're muted.
There it goes. I knew I didn't have control of that, so that's unfair. That does not count.
Well, because I really want to listen to you texting your friends.
Well, today's my birthday, so I'm getting a lot of birthday wishes.
Well, happy birthday. Happy
Thanks.
birthday.
I appreciate that. 45.
Is it really your birthday?
Yeah, there's my birthday. Yeah, it falls right on Correctional Officer Week every year.
Oh my God! we got to sing happy birthday to this guy.
No! Don't. I got
1,200 people here. We'll lose the half of the audience.
No! Happy birthday! But I wanted to mention a couple.
Happy birthday, brother! Happy birthday! Go ahead.
I appreciate that, guys. So one thing is, I'm assuming the room she went in was a strip room. That's probably we're not going to have a camera for that. Usually, the strip room is going to be right before the inmate gets into the vehicle somewhere, because you don't want a lot of spots where they can pick up things. So you want to make it quick. But I want to mention something. Corruption at the highest level is a concern because it makes the facility more forgiving. One thing that you may have through that paramilitary structure is some level of control over staff. If staff feel that they're afraid to say no, I just did an article today on saying no to authority, which is not easy to do. I want you to realize that it's not easy to do in a paramilitary structure. But the one thing you'll never have control over are those inmates. That's why the inmates will be quick to talk about the favoritism. Now, here's the thing. Once you have one inmate that this person showed favor to, well, the problem is now you have a problem, because if she doesn't make that fair in how she treats the other inmates, they're going to expose her. So she's going to have to do what she can to keep them quiet. You know, that's what's going to wind up happening here. So I think for me, the biggest concern I have is, how did this inmate have such access to such a high-level official that they can actually turn them, corrupt them? It makes me think if they had a relationship prior. Do they know each other prior? I don't know, because in my opinion, staff right there would catch that immediately. If I had my assistant director coming on a unit all the time to see an inmate, I know that I would feel very uncomfortable with that, and I would go to my area supervisor, my sergeant, whoever, to say, listen, I got a concern. This person's coming in my unit a little too much.
Right. Hey, let me ask you, and this goes to the whole panel here. And again, anybody can take this, but is there a national standard for prisoner transport across the country? Russ, Anthony, Connie, anybody want to talk on it?
Well, there's okay, so let's just do it this way first. And then, so you do have, what we would want are the best practices that are usually checked on by different organizations to make sure we're in compliance. So having said that, one thing here is, per PREA standards, there should be at least a male. And I know we're talking about numbers here. I get that. You know, we're talking about at least 2. That may be hard to get, but PREA standards, if this facility follows PREA, which most likely they do, I only think there's two states or 2 facilities or 2 states that don't. The problem is they're definitely in violation by having the female go out alone on a transport with a male inmate, due to the fact that she's going to be directly overseeing them, and it's a post that's going to require a strip. As for the number, there are policies and procedures that will state that you have to have at least 2, whatever the case may be, but I don't think they're forced into compliance like the PREA would force them.
Right.
Thoughts,
I'll give you an example. Okay, so the guy's 6'9", 330 pounds. I saw 270. Whatever the case may be, he's a big dude. When we went on put prisoners on airplanes and we traveled on commercial airlines, it was always myself and 2 detectives, right? But when the guy or girl was had a history of either attempted escape or murder or something really heinous in their background and their criminal history, we would go with 4 guys. So we would have 2 that sat, right in the front of him, and we had a detective and the perpetrator together, and 2 in the front, two in the front, 1 with him and 1 guy in the back. So it just baffles. It's mind blowing to me that this female was able to pull this off without anybody going, hey, wait a minute. We don't ever do this. This is something that should never be done in any facility. I don't care if you're in bumfuck Idaho or if you're in Alabama or you're in New York City or you're in California. This shit should not be happening anytime, any day, because who gets affected by this? The community. These people in Alabama are freaking out because you got this heinous criminal who's now on the run. Granted, we know he's probably not with her in Alabama, but now what state and what country has to deal with these 2? They have allegedly a 9mm that she left out of there with. There's talk about an AR-15 and a shotgun. If this is the case, now we have our civilians who we take an oath to protect and serve. And correctional officers take that same oath to keep these animals, these monsters, these sick demons behind the wall where they belong. So for me, as a civilian, and we're all civilians here now, with the exception of Anthony, we're all civilians at this point, right? We say to ourselves, our communities aren't safe now because this guy is out there with her. And they're going to do whatever they have to do to get themselves free. So you're going to hear now the sheriff talk about the men and women, the brothers and sisters in blue, if they approach these two, to use extreme caution. It just, guys, I'm in no way putting down our brothers and sisters in the correctional field. They do a fantastic job. But when something like this happens, I know that New York City Police Department was a reactive department. Every time someone screwed up and did something that was up, they had a patrol guide revision. I guarantee this facility is going to have a top to bottom revision change. We're going to talk about that as soon as we come back from listening to this sheriff give a press conference. So Anthony, text away, and happy birthday, brother. I hope there's vodka in that drink.
Nah, coffee. I don't drink.
You suck. All right, here we go.
From the location it was found, that video, a patrol car parked at the intersection of Huntsville Road and
this is the news conference from 2 days ago.
Which is about 2 blocks from the location it was found. That video was time stamped at 9:49 a.m. Director White and Casey White left the detention center at 9:41 a.m. So that's 8 minutes time span. What that tells us is that the patrol car left the detention center and went straight to the parking lot. There was not enough time for them to even attempt to try to come to the courthouse and then get out there and be at that red light 8 minutes later. So the direction of travel was from the courthouse, from the detention center directly out Huntsville Road to Cox Creek and then to the Florence Square shopping parking lot.
Which tells us they had no intention of doing anything but having him escape.
The other thing that I want to make you aware of today is that we have had a warrant issued for Director Vicky White. The charges are permitting or facilitating escape in the first degree. That's Alabama Code 13A 2034. So there is an active warrant out for Ms. White, obviously for Casey White. So we're in hopes that we'll get some much needed breaks here in the next few hours, few days that will help us locate them and get them back here to Lauderdale County and get Casey White, especially behind bars. Casey White, as you've heard me say over and over, is an extremely dangerous person, and we need to get him located and get him off the street. So again, thank you for all your help in that. At this time, I want to issue to the U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Alabama, Marty Keeley. Marty's, as I said, his fugitive task force has been a tremendous asset to us, not only in this case, but in cases over the years. And we appreciate all their assistance and help. So, Marty, Mr. Marshall.
Yeah, this is the U.S. Marshal for covering that district. He's the one who covers the district. He's the big boss. And I want to just say, shout out to the U.S. Marshals. They are the unbelievable premier long arm of the law. They are experts at hunting down evil. And I'm telling you, they're on this case. We're going to see we're going to see some kind of closure in this case. I have a feeling sooner than later.
Thank you, Sheriff. I just want to add that the Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force, U.S. Marshals Service Gulf Coast Task Force, is assisting the sheriff and his deputies in this investigation. They've been a partner of the Marshals Service for many years now. I would like to emphasize that this case is now a major case for the United States Marshals Service, which helped to facilitate the reward for information, up to $10,000 for information leading to the location of either one of these particular suspects or subjects. I would like to ask the public to keep in mind that Casey White is a large individual. He is 6 feet 9 inches tall. You know, there is the possibility that he's changed his identity as far as his looks, but he will stand out at 6 feet 9 inches. So I want to emphasize that to the public. Again, that information or any information about this case can be reported to 911, and that is the way you should report it. Either one of these individuals, we consider both of them dangerous, and in all probability, both individuals are armed. Thank you, Sheriff.
All right, at this time, I'll be glad to take a few questions. And my media policy for the years that I was chief of police in Florence and as sheriff has been, it's on the table, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If there's an investigative or legal reason I can't answer your question, I'll let you know.
Sheriff Owen Lopez, ABC News.
Yes.
What was the interaction between the two in that surveillance video that you saw?
Actually, the surveillance video was not clear. It was from a distance and really couldn't make out any individuals per se, but we definitely know it was a patrol car.
Was he seated in the back of the patrol car or in the front?
From the video camera footage we have, we can't tell, but I'm sure he was probably in the back. He was in the back when he left the jail. To stop on the side of the road, all those roads are heavily traveled.
So they asked about the video surveillance at the mall, at the shopping plaza where they found the sheriff's car.
Someone would have seen something and suspected something, I think. So we're assuming he remained in the back seat until they arrived at the parking lot.
Was he handcuffed when he went into the patrol car?
He was handcuffed and shackled.
There's confirmation there.
We have gotten some tips, and of course we're following every lead we get. We've had some tips. I think I've let y'all know we've gotten a couple of tips on a possible vehicle. We're still pursuing that, trying to get a positive confirmation on a possible vehicle they switched into. But yes, we've gotten some information that's been helpful.
Have you been able to get in contact with his family so far?
We have.
Sheriff Matt from Cal 31 here. A lot of people here, of course, are following this, but there's folks across the country that are also following this. With the lead time that they had to get out ahead of this thing, those hours are important. What have you done to work with folks along the borders and airlines to make sure that maybe they didn't slip through those cracks?
Yeah. We have not, to my knowledge, unless the task force has, and I'm not aware, been in touch with.
Call for escorting inmates?
Well, protocols were in place. We have a policy. It required two deputies transport. This was, again, lends us to believe how it was orchestrated because we had two vans of inmates leave just minutes before Director White had Casey White brought up front. Both those vans had two deputies on them. One had 5 inmates, the other had 7 inmates. Minutes after the second van left, Director White instructed another corrections deputy to bring Casey White up, prepare him for transport. That's when they put the handcuffs and the shackles on him as customary and protocol. She informed the booking officer that she was the only available person that was certified to carry arms to transport. So she was going to bring him to the courthouse, drop him off to the other deputies, and then go to a medical appointment. So, that's why I'm sure that the booking officer didn't question it. She, after all, is her boss, and she coordinates all the transport. So, that's sort of how that transpired. Yes, ma'am.
So, is your investigation going with, now that there's a warrant, are you going with now more that she could possibly be involved, that he didn't coerce her, threaten her against her will? Is that still a possibility?
That he threatened her?
Mm-hmm.
We know she participated.
Right.
Now whether she did that willingly.
To have this happen with one of your own, how upset are you? Do you feel betrayed at all with the way this is played out so far?
Well, absolutely. If she did this willingly, those of us who work with Vicky White and have worked with her for years, this is not the Vicky White we know by any stretch of the imagination. She has been an exemplary employee. I was told by the director of the jail that Friday night it was like you was at a funeral wake. The employees are just devastated that she was involved in this, and they're concerned for her safety, as are we. And, we just hope that this has a good ending.
This prevent for
people that you guys are bringing to bear also for this search and for what you guys are doing right now as we speak?
Yes, I said we've partnered with the Sheriff's Office for many years, and this is now a major case for the United States Marshals Service, which triggers additional resources. I won't go into the exact number that we have on site in other locations also. But as the sheriff said, we are receiving tips. We're following up on each and every one of those tips. So we're fully committed to this investigation.
As a member of law enforcement, is it harder to maybe find them because she may know the tricks of the trade?
Well, obviously, she's been in corrections for 17 years, so she has knowledge that the general general citizen would not have. that I think that certainly played in her favor as far as getting him out of jail like she did. So, somebody.
All right, I wanted to show most of that because I thought it was very relevant. He spoke about procedure. He spoke about his deputies being shook by the act that the commissioner, that she did. That this is not the Vicky White that they all known and worked alongside of 17 years. Again, the question is how does this get pulled off, and what do they do to ensure the public that this never happens again? And somebody asked in the chat, is this a common occurrence? Do people break out of jails on a regular basis? We do hear about it, but is this a common occurrence, Russ?
When you look at the jails, there is a bigger problem in jails with regards to breakouts. There are, several instances across the country every year where that happens, even sometimes, 2 or 3 at a time. It's just kind of, dependent on each jail. We have a lot of facilities across the nation that, are, lacking both in technology and in, recent infrastructure and upgrades and that kind of thing. So, and plus, we have this huge deficit on manning and staffing those facilities. So it can, take and that's not to minimize, staff's either involvement or or complacency in doing that, but for the most part, jails are fairly safe. Jails are very resistant towards escape, but with the number of people that we have locked up, the number of facilities that we have, I think it's like 3,800 counties, 50 states, with multiple institutions, and then the Federal Bureau of Prisons. There's going to be incidents and there's going to be successful escapes at some time, someplace. I think the thing to focus on here is really, training and getting the best people possible. And we're starting to finally see across the nation correctional officers getting paid more so that they'll have a bigger investment in both their training and their outlook on being proactive in that whole safety and security culture.
Absolutely. And Russ, can you tell the audience, I know Anthony has explained this numerous times, what's the difference between a jail and a prison?
Okay, so a jail is usually a holding facility for someone who's alleged to have committed a crime pending prosecution, or if they've only committed certain types of misdemeanors or felonies, they can be, after sentencing, held at a jail. Most of the country, that's for, 1 year maximum. Here in California, we changed it about 6 or 7 years ago to where it can be up to 3 years in jail. Anything beyond that is at the state level. And when we have state level run facilities, those are what we refer to as the prisons or the penitentiaries. Those are the ones for far more serious crimes and for inmates doing much longer sentences. So you just think about it as kind of, if I was to give a good analogy, you've got your major leagues and then you've got your farm teams, and your farm teams are like the jails, and then the major league is more like the prison system.
I love it. I love it. That's a great analogy right there. And it's almost like when you hear like all the talk at the county jails where the guys go, I'm going upstate. Yeah, you're going.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that.
They got sentenced. Connie, I want to go to you because I feel like I'm underutilizing you tonight, and I love you. So, Connie, I want to ask you a question, and a lot of the ladies in the chat want to know this. Are inmates throughout our correctional facilities manipulating female correction officers?
You're muted. What a good day for
so clearly they tried, right? Like I don't think
Connie, let me rephrase the question. Okay, Connie, are inmates across the United States in correctional facilities manipulating female correction officers, and vice versa? Are female prisoners manipulating male prison correction officers?
So manipulation is a part of the game, right? It's a part of our existence. It's our reality. And through training and through some vigilance and understanding of the environment, we can either identify that the manipulation process has begun and it's happening, or we can see when it's happening in our colleagues and try to intervene. You know, I mean, how many times are they successful? I mean, inmates ask for stuff all the time that they should not have, whether it's a male inmate approaching a female staff person or a female inmate approaching a male staff person. You know, they use what they can in the moment to seize the opportunity. And if they see that there's a vulnerability, they will take full advantage of that vulnerability. And then if you as that employee can continuously shut them down or redirect them or whatever you need to do to sort of put their manipulative behaviors on pause, right? Because they're not going to stop trying. I think that's the thing, right? They continue to try. It's who do they get to, right? At what point do they see that they've gotten a little edge or someone gave a little in a situation? So does it happen across the nation? Absolutely. And I feel like, you know, they try until they get it, until they get one person to say yes. I don't think they ever stop trying. I think that there are some institutions that do very well to ensure that the opportunities to manipulate are limited, right? And so oftentimes you may have someone who works on their own all the time. And so that's an opportunity for an inmate to kind of try to get an in with that person. But when you're working, you have a partner, there's people around, you know, it's just like our reality. I feel like that's the thing that we've got to recognize and not be afraid to say something when we see somebody out of pocket or something out of place.
So essentially, inmates are trying to fish around to see who the weaker ones are and who they can get over on easier. So they're almost like fishing, like, oh, let me try her, let me try him, let me try this one, and they go from officer to officer. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. So basically, that's why you got to protect your higher staff. That's why you also see officers are very protective of their supervisors. Like if the inmate sees inconsistency in how things are ruled or how things are governed, they're going to go where the biggest vulnerability is. You're right. Mommy said no. Will daddy say yes?
Right.
The access to a higher level staff member is always going to be their main target because they have influence of staff. Like if I can get to an officer, that's great. But if I can get to a sergeant, that's even better. If I can get to a lieutenant, that's better. If I can get to an executive assistant director, whatever that specific title is, that's the best because that person has influence over the people who have influence over the people who have influence over the people who have influence over me. So,
right.
And the big thing about the inconsistency and what Connie was mentioning is the fact that that is a bit of a vulnerability. When we have facilities that are very inconsistent in their operations, it does expose some level of vulnerability because for inmates, there's a process to manipulation. It's not about the outcome. It's about the process. Can I control this staff member? Can I get them to be in compliance with my needs? And at the end of the day is if you expose that higher level staff member constantly to that inmate, because right now prisons and jails have more interactions than they ever did before, which makes us more vulnerable because inmates are always evolving, especially in the stuff that they're allowed to read. I know women that were allowed to read How to Seduce a Man. And therefore, we want to get the books out, but you can't, Dan. You can't because they have the right to read whatever they want.
So I think it's clear and evident here that she was clearly manipulated by this inmate. But again, there's things that are in place. You know, fellow coworkers, fellow executive. She wasn't the only one there that was in charge. There was some lower line supervisors and maybe some parallel with her. So there had to be people who saw something but just chose to ignore it. And I'm just guessing at this, but at the end of the day, we look at the situation and we say to ourselves, how the hell did this happen? And it was able to happen in this county jail. You know, Vicky White, 17-year veteran of the department and was, you know, in upper management. I mean, you heard the sheriff talk. Hey, she was running the show, and now this is where she's at. There's a US Marshals wanted reward, and I feel like, you know, again, there's a $10,000 reward for him and a $5,000 for her. It should have been 10 and 10, but for whatever reason, they decided to put her value down to 5,000. Again, that's just me observing that, and I'm saying to myself, you know, what's going on here? They're both equal criminals. He just has murdered somebody, and she's on the run with him. And I would imagine that if she's challenged, she's going to fight alongside of him. So we don't know people in the chat. I want to go to the chat now because it's almost an hour. Pat's Cat sends in a super chat and she says, is it possible he threatened her family? Oh, hell yeah. Hold on a second.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, hell yeah, lady. So you never know. You never do know what's going on behind the scenes. But I got to tell you this. The U.S. Marshals, the feds, the local guys, they're investigating this. They're going to look at every single engagement, every single message that she's ever sent in the last year or so, every text message, every Google search, every email, every interaction on social media, every piece of planning that she might have done for this, i.e. clothing, supplies. We know her bank transactions. She put her house, which was valued at over $200,000, on an internet auction site. She got $95,000 for a house that was worth $200,000+. So that was done all April 18th. She had those funds and she had that money available to her. This was a well planned out, probably not, on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10. This was probably a 7 in my book, a 6 or a 7, because she was a little sloppy about it. But she planned this thing out. This was not something that she said, I'm going to go into work today and I'm going to break this guy out. This was a well thought out thing. Any thoughts from either of you guys and girls on the panel? Connie?
I mean, one thing I wanted to say, as we're talking about it, I feel like, these are situations that people get themselves in and they don't know how to get out, right? So like, while we're talking about and looking at, her taking out the money and the retirement and all that stuff, like there's tons of stuff out there that she did. I'm thinking to myself, if you're already caught up with this one inmate, you got the other inmates in the unit already talking about all the things that she was doing. And then adding insult to injury, she was well liked. It was all of this, right? So now there's that shame, it's the embarrassment, there's all this stuff, right? And, was she planning, clearly she was planning her exit strategy, right? To go in and put in her paperwork for retirement, to make sure people don't expect to see her, right? Like, it's like all these things that are in motion. And, I'm even wondering, like, was she trying, clearly she's trying to escape the situation, but did she have an option to escape the situation without the dude? Like the person who asked the question about her, possibly her family being threatened and, that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there just because there's just so much stuff happening. And, for someone to have been in the system, I mean, I hate to sound like, what's the word? Like gullible, right? Or it's just like, how did this happen to her? Like, you think to yourself, like, it could happen to anyone. And we talk about it all the time. We talk about manipulation in the process and all of that. But, 17 years or however long she's preparing to retire. And was all that conversation because she was already preparing, right? Like, was she prepared? She trying to escape the fact that she's down this rabbit hole and she can't get out of it? I don't know. It just has me thinking just all the other stuff. Like, yes, I think we know up front. Yes, she had a plan. She's executing that plan. She's trying to get out, right? Like, because who sells their $200,000 home for $95,000, right? Like, she needs that money now. And why, right? What's the urgency of doing that? And, clearly this thing happens as well. But I just feel like there's just a lot that happened in a short period of time.
Can I add something too? So two things. One thing is she may have had 17 years in the department, but I'll tell you something. How they define a successful career could be different, because if she was able to do all this and they saw nothing up to this point, then I'm really going to question how they see someone being a successful person in their career. That's just a perspective. But the other thing is, the reason why I don't feel that she's been threatened is, one, there was an update that said that the inmates have said that they have like a special relationship. The other thing is this, is if she was threatened by the outside, the inmate would still be a threat to her, and she's too comfortable with the inmate. So if the inmate had some connection to the outside, which they could, and posed a threat, she would not be as comfortable with that inmate as she was in that video. So I do believe that there was a relationship. I do believe it formed behind the prison. And the other thing is okay, we got 17 years. But what that does to me is it makes me question those 17 years, because maybe there's a lot of things there that they kind of let slide. Plus, she's the director of operations. So
Right.
she has influence on how things are done. So technically, she's the final say that people rely on. So if they're going to her for the final say, then you can automatically assume that maybe in their mind there wasn't a problem because she's the final filter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Hey, I just want to say thank you to the live chatters. You guys are awesome in the chat. There's over 1,300 people here. Thank you so much for the super chat. Debbie Jackson says, my ex-husband went to prison on a drug charge. He got mixed up with gangs. A gang member on the street came to my house. Well, I'm glad you're here and able to talk to us about that. It's a dangerous world out there, and when you get involved with gangs and all the drug trade and things of that nature, not a lot of good comes out of that. So it is there are dangerous folks. Pat's Cats sent in a multiple amounts of super chats. She said if she got threatened, what could she do? Russ, I'll let you take that one. I know, Anthony, it's your birthday. I'm trying to give you a break, brother.
No, when Russ is done, I can comment on that too. We usually partner off each other.
Okay.
So the thing is you know, the more complex that you try and make this, really, the less likely it is to have that. And I'm not saying that it's not there and it's not a possibility, but it's increasingly unlikely as we go further along in time. The thing that she could have done is you know, she could have, you know, made that telephone call. She could have talked to someone even from inside the prison where she wouldn't be viewed, and let someone know if someone was threatening her family. Right now, it certainly appears to me that probably the sheriff's department and the marshal's service has probably made sure that all of her family is indeed safe and that there are no corrupting influences, which of course is something that you have to worry about, because, you know, prison gangs do have, you know, potential influence in, you know, carrying out all kinds of extortion schemes, most of which do take place from inside the prison. So there is that. But like I say, as time marches on, the chances of that being a factor are smaller and smaller. And as Anthony pointed out, she was just, you know, too easy and too calm, even for what she was doing right in that moment. I've handled a lot of high profile prisoners, and I'll tell you what, every time I did it, I was nervous as heck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She seemed very laid back. She seemed very laid back. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Anthony.
I think two things is her calm came from the plan that she already had in process. So I believe she was very calm with that. And second thing is, let's say even if there was a threat, hypothetically, I agree with Russ said. I mean, there's a lot of fail safes in play that you could go to. But having said that, same thing with a hostage situation in a prison. If you're compromised, you're told right off the bat what you have to do, because your power of authority has been nullified. You don't have any authority. My concern with this right now is the prison itself, the facility, the jail, doesn't have a lot of fail safes in play just in case these things occur. So you're telling me that even the person at the highest level should still require a co-signature, should still require something else that provides that authorization. So now you have two people in play just in case there's one person that's a little questionable. We even do that with our class officers. If we have one class officer who's dealing with a release, and let's just say they work in release and they're like, okay, I'm going to let this inmate go, they still have to have somebody else, and then the administrator sign off. So there's so many signatures in play.
Right. Double checks, triple checks, and checks and balances. Russ, okay, so I'm going to go to the chat and get some questions quickly. Before we get to the chat, by a show of hands of everybody in the chat, who agrees that Vicky White was manipulated into this situation and that she was edged into it? In other words, who here feels she was not a bad seed, but this guy had enough chutzpah to kind of get her to be on his team and to go along with this game plan? Her husband died, I believe, January of 2022 from, I want to say Alzheimer's or some type of Parkinson's. Thank you, Connie. I love you. That's why, you know, you always got my back. I might have to steal you from Anthony. So yeah, I'm only kidding. Look at Anthony.
Lucky I was muted. You muted me before I could answer that one.
Exactly. He's like, dude, on my birthday? How?
No, you muted me. You knew what you were going to say that day. That was
I'm in control here. I got the whole panel. I'm producing, I'm doing everything. All right, so there's a lot of number ones in the chat. A lot of people agree. I see one person that disagrees. People are saying she's a criminal. I think she was extorted. I think she fell in love. Josh, the producer, who is not here producing, I'm doing his job. He says, no comment. Happy birthday, Anthony. Good job, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Just remember, I sign your paycheck, Josh, not Anthony. Both are to blame. I do feel sorry for her. She is a criminal, says Sarah Fuller. Granny says, nope. Some grannies are really tough, man. Debbie Jackson, she agrees. Nope. Michelle says, it takes two to tango. Hey, I agree 100%. Young at Heart says the same thing. It takes two to tango. So yeah, a lot of mixed signals here. I want to go to this esteemed panel, and then we're going to come to the chat, and we're going to get your questions ready. Okay, so we're going to and keep the questions pertaining to prison, prison procedure and prison. These guys cannot talk to you and give you an idea about what happens in the investigation outside, but there certainly is an internal investigation. You can keep the questions towards correction related, and then we'll pick and choose some of the comments in inmate manipulation. There's the book. We're going to talk about that in a minute. All right. I'm going to start with I'll start with you, Russ, because it's Anthony's birthday boy. We're going to give him and Connie the last words. If you guys, I'm going to ask this to my esteemed panel. Is there anything that you guys can think of as correction professionals that could have stopped this from happening? Russ, I'll start off with you.
Absolutely. I think that probably the point at which things kind of broke down in this particular case, in this particular scenario, was I see a lack of training there. I think that you need to embolden your staff to speak up when they see something, is about to happen that's against policy and that's against procedure, regardless of who's directing them to do it. As a peace officer working in California, I had, full authority, and I knew what the laws were. I knew what the policies were and the procedures. And I wasn't afraid to, raise my hand or shout out or take some kind of, proactive approach to stopping something like that. In this case, it appears that there was a failure of the system to recognize it. Part of that might be that they weren't used to seeing a guy of this caliber, of this notoriety, this type of, danger in their midst. And they, just due to the fact that they were working with a limited number of inmates. I think you mentioned 220. It was the max there, or something like that. Well, I would have like on the last institution that I worked at that was an adult facility. We had 3 different yards with more than 12 or 1,300 inmates on each yard. So I think sometimes when you understand the scale and you work with different inmates day in and day out, and so many more of them are on that high end that are, killers and, people who are absolutely maniacally violent, you start to appreciate and get a little bit sharper about what's going on in your day-to-day interactions.
And let me ask you, Russ, while I have you here on full screen, is it common that an assistant director, whether it be of transportation or of the whole facility, to transport a prisoner?
So once again, that's really, a matter of scale. When you start thinking about, the number of individuals that they probably have running that place and the, absolute lack of manpower that most facilities experience now, it's probably not that uncommon. If she was at a much larger facility like the ones that I was working at, where we had thousands and thousands of inmates and, sometimes even, hundreds and hundreds of officers, the chances that she would be, involved in something at the tactical level would be very small. Whereas, there she's probably, they're probably used to seeing her. They're probably used to dealing with her. She probably comes in and picks up, a spare shift here and there, maybe for a little bit of extra money. I can't say that. I don't know for sure, because she's probably salaried, but, maybe they were paying her extra to do some transports. So I think, it's a matter of the scale that you experience in the job that you're in. I went from, you know, the largest state run correctional system to one of the smallest juvenile facilities in all of the United States. And, you know, it was a culture shock, the number of things that we had to do different in such a small facility. And, you know, we would have the director of the whole department would be there, you know, in uniform, helping us out, you know, sling, you know, hash every day.
Amazing.
So it's a different thing. It's a different experience.
Connie, I want to get a woman's point of view on this, and I want to highlight this comment right here.
Thank you, Kirk.
Kirk says, all in capital letters, please give Connie equal time. And hold on, Kirk, I'm gonna do this for you. There you go. Connie, you got it. Go.
Oh my God. I mean, this case, you know, I think we could all speculate about what went wrong. And, you know, quite frankly, we have to depend on systems to protect us, right? And so when we have the appropriate systems in place that wouldn't allow for these type of things to happen, I mean, I think it was you may have just said something about, you know, policies are going to change, right? Which is usually what happens, right? The policy changes because this thing has transpired. And so now, you know, there is going to be this insurance in place that we've double checked that 2 people are going out. We've double checked that there's an actual court order. There's a mental health order, a medical order, whatever it is that someone could say, it's going to be some checklist created somewhere. There's going to be some checks and balances added to the process to take away the element of we're friends. I know this person, we get along. You know, it's going to take away the element of the title, right? It doesn't matter who's the title, right? And I think it'll take retraining. But I think because this situation has happened, any staff who was a part of it is going to be hyper vigilant. They're going to make sure they've double checked and triple checked, even if it's just a matter of protecting each other, right? From the possibility that someone may be getting manipulated. And I'm sure in their mind, they're probably thinking it must have been a manipulative process because she's just the person we know and love, right? She would never do this. And I think that's the thing. If we have those systems in place that are actually going to make sure that we don't let people make these sort of unilateral decisions that are against policy. Because then if that decision had to be escalated, for example, right? Like, so the 2 transports left before her, it already took out 7 people. She had the 8th person, right? Or whatever the number was that sheriff was talking, right? Yeah. She had the extra person who was coming out. Should there have been something that made us check to make sure that there was an authorization for her to take this 7th person out or 8th person out because it was an emergent situation? There was no emergency there, right? Like, because the narrative of she was taking him to drop him off to the others who already went, you know, could it have just been the perfect storm? Possibly. But at the end of the day, I think us creating systems that would prevent that sort of decision making on the fly, because that was an opportunity that presented itself. And the more I think we take away the ability, and I get it, as a director, assistant director, there's a level of authority, but there's also an advanced level of accountability for that person. And so if this isn't always the process, then she shouldn't have been allowed to do that.
Right. I want to ask you something quick. Could it have been possible that this inmate said that he was sick or that he wasn't feeling well to kind of delay him going with the others, if in fact he did have a court date? But we're finding out now that there was no court date, there was no hearing for him. But I'm saying, is it conceivably possible that he could have delayed him being brought up to be transported, and then to have her create that situation? I'm the only one that's firearm qualified, and I'll take him.
Please.
No.
Even if he created that situation, he would have then gone in to go see medical, right? Yeah. Like, they're not going to just take him out because he said it. Like, someone is going to go assess his ailment, whatever that ailment is, and then they would have canceled whatever his court trip would have been, or his medical or mental health trip would have been, because he's sick. They're not going to just then, oh, you go ahead and take him out. Like, that's not the process.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, no, that came in onto DutyRon.com. All right, Anthony, we got to get your what could have been done to avert this. What are your feelings on what could have happened to stop this?
One thing is, if they were so understaffed, you could work with the courts and say, hey, listen, right now I don't feel safe. Right now we're short-staffed. Can this be rescheduled? Most of the time they will work with you, because they're not going to force you to do something that threatens safety and security. Or you can call another agency nearby and ask for assistance, because I'm under right now and you think I can help me. But most likely, if you called the courts would understand it, because the courts will not, once you push, and I know this from the administrative side, if there's a concern that relates to safety and security, the court will work with you, and trust and believe. They may mandate stuff, but you say, hey, listen, you really want me to do this? Right now I'm under. Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. Right now I'm under, but if I do this, it could violate safety and security. The courts will usually work with you. The other thing is that the procedure here in play is obviously something where you have a female officer, let's just say. Now, I do agree with Russ. I've been to other facilities. I was involved in a show called 60 Days In, the first 2 seasons, and I saw officers that were both officers and medical. If a code happened, they would have to switch roles, and they would be medical, and that's the performance they serve. So I could see the facility being under to where she can perform a role. But here's the funny thing, though, about that. Usually, when you're in a supervisory position, you may be able to work down within that supervisory position, but never all the way down to the front line. Like, if I was a lieutenant, maybe I can work down as a sergeant, but I can't work down as an officer. If I was an executive person, I could work down to a lieutenant. I doubt as far down as a sergeant, maybe one step below, but you have to protect those higher positions, because, again, those higher positions are in positions of influence. And I want to say one more other thing, too. When they check this all out, the leadership is going to be in trouble first, because it looks like they allowed a culture of complacency. When you have a culture of complacency, which I'm sorry, that's what I think it is. I could be wrong, but hear me out, only based on what we see here. The problem is you have to go to leadership first, because the culture of complacency only exists when people aren't being held accountable. And the leadership will always be the first to go, because you're not going to strengthen the staff and then put them under bad leadership. It doesn't make any sense. You're putting good staff under a lid where they're never going to be able to surpass. So what do they do first? They come after the leaders. They'll replace the leaders to build some level of faith, because right now there is going to be some level of faith lost in the running of that facility. So how do we gain it back? We trade off the leadership. Leadership's got to go. And that's where it becomes a conflict now, because people start to blame each other. The front line and management tend to go against each other because they both wind up being in survival mode.
Excellent points, Anthony, and thank you for that. And I wanted to, that was going to be my next question. What happens at this facility? Who takes the hit for this? Does it go site wide, the facility wide? Every boss working that day get some kind of hit and some kind of trouble for this happening? What's the pecking order? How does this go? The sheriff is in charge. We know that. We saw, Sheriff Rick Singleton. Seems like a very nice professional who's been around for probably 30, 40 years. Who knows? Does he now look at this and tear this whole place down? Does people get transferred behind this? People want to know what happened.
So basically what's going to happen here, when an emergency situation occurs, let's say this escape, whatever it is, the first thing management's going to do is look at policy to make sure there's no violation of policy. Now, again, they're going to look to hold somebody accountable. Of course, the front line would say, well, maybe the policy wasn't as effective. So you have this challenge. But I will tell you one thing: leadership cannot isolate themselves from the failure of what looks to be a culture concern. So I say the first thing that's going to happen is they go after the leadership 100%. Now, leadership is going to look to push people accountable. But having said that, even if you had good policies in play, they weren't being enforced, which goes right back to accountability. At any point where, you're not enforcing those policies by holding people accountable, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to take out the whole team from bottom to top, because at that point I don't have to fix one person. I have to fix the culture. So if this was to get shifted up and people are looking at it down, They're looking at a culture concern, which means if I'm going to shift the culture and I'm going to build trust, guess what? The only way you can change the culture is changing leadership. And I think leadership gets affected.
And the question on the screen, what a great explanation right there. And that's it in a nutshell. What is leadership? That is the upper management. He's talking, he's referring to
sheriff on down.
Yeah, from the sheriff straight down. However it goes, so whatever the pecking order is there, it starts at the top and it just trickles downhill, and everybody takes a hit for it, right down to the low man on the totem pole that hooked that guy up and set him up to be put out to her outside. Nothing But Love sends in $100 super chat, and she says, "Thank you to all for sharing your knowledge and opinions." Well, thank you so much for that, Denise. Much love and respect to you, and thank you kindly for that generous super chat. You're always such a great supporter of Crime Time with DutyRon, and we do appreciate that. Let's roll over to the chat. Again, thank you everybody for participating and being respectful. There's still over 1,300 folks here, an hour and 25 minutes into this. So there is an extreme, want and need to find out answers to these questions. We have Connie, Anthony, and Russ from Tier Talk. These guys are professionals. Guys and gals are professionals in the correction field. If you're not subscribed to Tier Talk, consider going over there and giving Anthony a subscription. I have it linked in the description. Let me go full screen with myself for a second. I have his channel, Connie's book, Anthony's book, and I'm going to have to add Russ's stuff into it because I didn't get all of that, but I will add it in at the end of this live stream. If you're not yet subscribed to Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, please consider hitting the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And if you guys all can do me a favor, hit the thumbs up. It helps in the algorithm. It helps to send this video out into YouTube land. I appreciate you and your support. Again, follow me on all things social media. One word, DutyRon, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and against Ed Wallace's wishes, we're on TikTok. What we do on TikTok is not dance on a pole. What we do on TikTok is we upload these informative videos in little snippets. Now, Connie would probably wish to see me on a dancing pole, but she's not going to get to see that on TikTok. But yeah, that's what we do there. Again, I want to say thank you to my guests here. You guys are tremendous. You give things in layman's terms, and that's what the folks love. Super chats are coming in. Connie, here's one for you. What does your gut say, Connie? They want to know, and I got to give you equal time. Damn. You're muted again, Connie.
Oh my God.
Oh, hell no.
Hell no.
Oh, goodness. So, I mean, my gut tells me that this woman has some kind of relationship with the guy. And, I don't know, maybe she thought they was going to be able to go run away and be happily ever after somewhere with all of the funds she was able to get her hands on. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like she got her hands on all that money, and that man is going to take her money and be done with her as soon as he can. Someone had written in there, psychologically, where do I think she is at, right? Like, someone who has lost their husband, they have no children, they're at the end of their career, and feeling perhaps maybe she has nothing to show for it, right? Like, I don't know if that's one of those, like, this is it for me, right? Like, self-esteem clearly non-existent, or self-confidence. I mean, we know that when people start manipulating or start getting manipulated, typically it's because they have that vulnerability, right? Where they can see through and see that they're not confident, or they won't put them in their place, right? Like, they know that they can go further. So, my intuition is telling me he has sold her on the dream of a future somewhere, which essentially, convinced her that clearing out her bank account, taking her retirement, selling her house, and leaving with this man was the thing to do, and that there was going to be some sort of future in that. And I just don't see how she could think that. It's a lot.
And Connie, you say these things so well, and I 100% agree with you. Kirk Mitchell, your favorite fan, says in all capital letters, more of Connie. Okay.
Oh my God, I can't.
Kirk, you're killing me. Lori Doolittle Bug Barnes says, thank you, DutyRon and panel. You're very welcome. I'm so glad that everybody has, has received some value from this live stream. If you like all things true crime related from that police perspective, let us know in the comment section down below. Send a message to Connie because she loves to answer comments. Send a message to Anthony and now our new friend, Russ, founder of Keepers of Kaos. Russ, do you have a YouTube channel yourself?
I do not have a YouTube channel. I have limited myself more exclusively toward driving traffic to Tier Talk because I think that, it served us best at the moment and still does. My training group on Facebook is, and officers and those who work in corrections only. So it's very limited in scope, but it was something that I designed to really help people function in such a difficult job.
Yeah. And, people don't realize how difficult it is to work behind the walls in correction facilities. It takes a special kind of man and woman to walk those tiers and to be out there engaging, and they are intertwined in lockup with with the prisoners. So it's a dangerous job. It's a thankless job. And I say, again, I tip my cap to all the brave brothers and sisters in corrections. You guys, we hand evil over to you from the streets and you guys take it from there. So, Russ, I would love to have you back as a guest sometime in the future. Would you be able to come back and join us with Anthony or without him?
Yeah. Either way, I would love to come back. I've enjoyed delving into this subject. I always approach these things from the viewpoint of maybe making the public a little more aware of what we do in corrections, what we're faced with. Maybe making some law enforcement officers and other correctional officers more aware about how they're handling certain things in their facilities. Maybe we stop something like this in the future.
Yeah. And that's all you can look to try to do is do better, right? We look to try to do better. You learn from these mistakes. And unfortunately, this is a big mistake. We have a killer on the loose right now. I want to address the elephant in the room. Mary says, and many people, I've seen this a lot in the chat. It's not disrespectful. My gut, I hate to say it is, my gut says he killed her, disposed of her, took everything she had, and is on the run. Connie, what's your thoughts on that?
I think there's a high likelihood that has happened, or it will happen if it hasn't happened already.
Yeah. Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that it's going to be a matter of how and what she did with that money and how much access he does or does not have to it yet. I saw that they had called in the Secret Service. The Secret Service is their big wheelhouse is, wire transfers and wire fraud. So if she wired that to some country and they thought they might be have a chance at stopping them from accessing it, maybe he hasn't harmed her yet. I certainly hope that in spite of the fact that I consider her a criminal now, I don't want anything bad to happen to her. But I think that as soon as he has access to the last of those resources, he will be done with her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, and Anthony, what's the thought process in general from correction professionals, from the upper management and from the regular correction officers? I know some people call correction officers correction guards, and they're not guards. They are correction officers. They're in there, and they are officers. They take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and they are doing it from inside a facility, inside a jail. What are the thoughts of correction staff across the country when they see this? Is it the same as when we see dirty cops, us good cops, we all cringe? We just say, you just made it worse for the next guy or girl to do the job. Is that the same type of consensus in the corrections profession?
Yeah, because to be honest with you, this is what the media will play with, So again, we'll spend all day saving lives and you'll never see that on the news. But when something comes like this, because it's entertaining. Media is driven by what entertains and what relates to an agenda that they're looking to get. So it is a step down for us. But if I could just say this is that the moment she did what she did, she was no longer one of us. So to continue to compare her to the other officers is unfair, because you're comparing someone who literally broke away from their sworn duty to protect and serve. So she doesn't even deserve to be in the same pool.
I agree. Russ, Connie, you guys on the same page with that, I assume?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I see, you know, what Anthony's talking about there is really true. You know, it's just she crossed that line, and it's a line beyond which, you know, she can never be recovered. And so it makes it so much harder on us when any one of us, you know, goes beyond those certain bounds, and we know where those are at. And you know, getting back to the media thing again, Anthony's absolutely right. You know, no matter how many, you know, airplanes get landed safely in a day in the United States, it's the one crash that everyone's going to focus on. Yeah. And so, you know, when we misbehave and it gets, you know, caught and paraded before the public, we all just look that much more horrible for it. And it's very difficult to work under circumstances like that.
Russ, I concur with you 1,000%. It's a black eye on all the good men and women and all of the civilian corrections doing God's work. So the good that gets done day in and day out, the lives that get saved. You know, we don't hear about officers who save an inmate's life from being attacked by another inmate. We don't hear about that when an officer gets slashed from ear to ear by a you know, a shank or a prison-made weapon. You know, they like to talk about all of the missteps. So Jennifer Nobles asked the question, will they be looking at all of her financials? 1,000%. From a law enforcement and detective standpoint, again, as I said from the beginning and in the middle of this video, they're going to look at every interaction that she's had for the last year or even more. They're going to look at everything that this woman did at her time in that facility. All the paperwork that she signed off on, all of the movements that she's authorized, every single piece of what she has done is going to get looked at. It's going to take time, but they're going to do it. And they're going to see if there's any patterns where she's showing favoritism towards this guy. Did she make requests to get him transferred there? Was there any type of finagling going on? So everything and anything is going to be looked at. But what's most important right now is to get both of them off the street and bring them back behind bars where they belong. So again, I can't say enough good about my replay viewers and the audience here. You guys have been unbelievable tonight. I greatly, greatly appreciate you. We are going to cover this back. We're going to watch it closely when they are taken into custody, and God willing, nobody from the civilian side or the law enforcement side gets hurt. That's what we don't want, any additional loss of life here, and that includes Vicky White. We don't want her to get killed, because we want her to come back and face the music and face the punishment for the crime that she committed. And we also want to bring him back and have him rot. And I think in Alabama, they do have the death penalty. So capital punishment is on the board. I know a lot of people are iffy and feel different ways about that, but I would like to see him come back and face the music. Again, thank you to everybody who has left super chats. I implore you guys to all go over and check out Cheer Talk with Anthony Gangi and all of his great guests. You can go and look at some of his videos. He's got people from all over the place. This guy's a jack of all trades. He knows everybody. And happy birthday. What you turned 29 today?
Yeah, 45.
Oh my God, you're as old as dirt. Holy shit. We do appreciate everybody coming in. I want to just give a final word if you guys have it. Anthony, any final words? Birthday boy, I'll let you go first.
I just want to say thank you. Your audience is very supportive. It gives us an idea of, you know, I mean, we want to present an idea like Russ said, like Connie said, where, you know, we can show people the professionals that work behind the wall by having you take time and connect with us, because we're no different than the people that work behind the wall. That's why we advocate for them. And if you do follow the channel, you'll notice that a lot of the stuff we talk about, it may be centered around corrections, but applied to almost every profession. There's not that big of a difference. We talk about leadership. We talk about, you know, basically as if we're running a business to some extent. But again, just to be on your channel is humbling, just to get the love and to have someone from the public to thank a correctional officer for what they do. We're just honored. And I appreciate you, DutyRon, for trusting us to come on. And with your audience, which is the biggest trust you could ever give somebody, and to have us talk to your audience and be very protective of your audience. So thank you for giving us the opportunity.
And I got to say, you're welcome, Anthony. And for me, anytime I can help highlight a fellow brother or sister in blue, or a fellow brother and sister in any capacity of law enforcement, I'm there 110% to do that. Connie, I give you, because of Kurt, some of the.
Listen,
as long as you want, Connie.
No, I just want to thank everyone. You guys always show me so much love, and I really, really do appreciate it. I mean, I think really being able to talk with you guys about what we know from actually working behind the wall, and it's not about this is what we learned in the book, right? To actually live it and be able to truly break down what we see and see where policies have been broken down. Because I think, when the news sort of splash things out there, it's whatever we see, like that whatever that first glance gives us, right? And when you don't have the context behind what you see, it kind of gives you a false sense of what really transpired. So I mean, allowing us to be able to be here and engage with your audience is really much appreciated. And, thanks for always having us.
Connie, again, I love to have you guys on because it gives everybody a bird's eye view of the job, right from, the medical parts to the intake to what happens in prisoner movements. And it's all relevant. It all comes full circle back to this case. Russ, any thoughts for the audience tonight?
I just want to say, thanks for having us here. Corrections, we're often, the forgotten stepchild of law enforcement. And, we rarely get portrayed in that positive light, no matter how many lives we save, no matter how many riots we put down, no matter how many escapes we stop. This was a tragic event, in which this officer was manipulated and exploited. But you know what? For everyone that's like her, there's a bazillion more of us out there that are, straining and working every day to do our very best to keep all of you safe from that wolf that's constantly at your door, even though you don't realize it. Because without, places to put the most dangerous elements of society, it would be up to each and every individual to just, do the best that they could for themselves. And so, that's the textbook definition almost of anarchy. So, it's great to come on here and be so appreciated. And I hope to do it again soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Russ. It was an honor and a pleasure. I just want to quickly say thank you to everybody that is leaving these messages. I've been highlighting them. If you are new here, let me know by saying new in the chat, and let us also know your city, state, or country, just so we can get an idea of how many people are outside of the country. There's still about 1,200 or so people, 1,114 to be exact. Let us know where you're watching from, and then we'll say goodbyes here. An hour and 40 minutes. I owe these guys overtime now, for crying out loud. How am I going to do this? I owe Anthony, his overtime rate is like $198 a minute. Yeah. So Alabama's checking in. New York, Uncle Fester is here. Sydney, Australia is checking in. Rhode Island, thank you for being new. And from DC, Gabby Smith, thank you for joining. Hello from Louisiana. Anybody from Alabama? Anybody from Alabama? You got a couple?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bakersfield, nice. Florida is joining. Thank you so much. Alabama is here. Newfoundland. Excellent. Thank you for joining, everybody. Yeah, it looks like a great group of people. All right, we're going to say God bless the world as we end all of these. God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially all victims of crime and their families. They need us now more than ever. And I say prayers for Vicky White's mom and all of the correctional folks who are affected by this, the community. There's victims here behind all of this. The person, the family who Mr. White took a life from, I send prayers to their family and give them strength because they are hurting right now. The person who is behind bars or was behind bars for the murder of their mom, for their sister, for their loved one is now free and out. No thanks to another correction official, and it's just devastating to have that happen. So guys, good night from New York City. I'll see you guys on the next one. Love and respect from my house to yours, and I'll see you on the next. Thank you guys. Peace.